Right now, somewhere in a locked room in Washington, 12 people are deciding what your savings will be worth tomorrow. Not next year. Tomorrow. Tomorrow afternoon, at exactly 2 o'clock Eastern Time, the Federal Reserve is going to announce a decision that could send gold and silver flying, or send them crashing through a floor nobody thought they'd break. And here's the strange part. Almost nobody watching the news tonight actually understands why this particular meeting is different from every other Fed meeting this year. If you own gold, if you own silver, if you've been thinking about buying either one, or if you simply keep a retirement account, you'd like to still be worth something in 10 years. What happens in that room tomorrow will reach into your life, whether you're paying attention or not. This is the story of how we got here, and why the next 24 hours might matter more than the last 12 months combined. If you're the kind of person who thinks about money, investing, gold, silver, or simply protecting what you've worked for, this is exactly the channel for you. Subscribe to Money Insights and hit like on this video, because every week we take the biggest, most confusing financial stories and break them down in plain English. No jargon, no noise, just what's actually happening and why it matters to you. Let's start with the number that should be impossible to ignore. 14 months ago, gold did something it had never done in its entire recorded history. It didn't just rise, it exploded, climbing more than 60% in a single year. Its best performance since 1979. Silver did something even wilder. It more than doubled. By late January of this year, gold touched a price near $5,600 an ounce. Silver hit a record above $121. Financial television couldn't stop talking about it. Ordinary people who had never bought a coin in their life were suddenly asking their bank about gold IRAs. And then, almost as fast as it rose, it started to fall. By the middle of this year, gold had slid back toward $4,000, a correction of nearly 30% from its peak. Silver fell even harder, cut nearly in half, dropping nasty from that record high, down into the $50 range. If you bought near the top, you watched a huge chunk of paper wealth disappear in a matter of months. If you were waiting on the sidelines, you may have felt something close to relief, or maybe confusion. Either way, the question every single owner of gold and silver has been asking is the same one. What actually happened? Here's where everything changes. It didn't start in a bank. It didn't start with the Federal Reserve. It started with a shipping lane. In late February, a conflict involving Iran escalated sharply, and the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway that a huge share of the world's oil physically passes through, became a flashpoint. Oil prices spiked. And oil prices spiking is never just about what you pay at the gas pump. It ripples into everything, because energy costs sit underneath the price of nearly every product you buy, from the plastic in your phone case to the diesel that moves your groceries across the country. When energy costs rise fast, inflation rises with it. Now here's the part most people miss. You'd think a war and a spike in inflation would be good news for gold. Gold is supposed to be the safe haven asset, the thing people run to when the world feels unstable. But that's not quite how it played out this time, and understanding why is the key to understanding everything that's about to happen tomorrow. Gold and silver don't just respond to fear. They respond, more precisely, to something economists call the real interest rate, which sounds complicated, but is actually a very simple idea. Imagine you have $1,000. You can put it in a savings account and earn interest, or you can buy gold, which pays you nothing while you hold it. If interest rates are high and inflation is under control, the savings account starts looking pretty attractive, and gold starts looking like a bar of metal sitting quietly in a vault doing nothing for you. But if interest rates are low, or if inflation is eating away at the value of that savings account faster than the interest can replace it, gold suddenly looks like the smarter place to park your money. That relationship, rates versus inflation, is the invisible hand behind almost every major move gold and silver have made in 2026. So when the Iran conflict pushed inflation higher, markets did something that surprised a lot of casual investors. They didn't price in more rate cuts to help the economy. They started pricing in rate hikes to fight the inflation. And a Federal Reserve that raises rates to fight inflation is a Federal Reserve that makes gold and silver less attractive, at least in the short term. That's the chain reaction. War pushes up oil, oil pushes up inflation, inflation pushes up rate hike expectations push up real yields, and real yields push down gold and silver. 5 plain steps. Once you see that chain, you can't unsee it, and you'll notice it running through almost every headline about metals prices this year. But there's another piece of this puzzle, and it arrived at almost exactly the same time. In June, the Federal Reserve got a new chair, Kevin Warsh. A new Fed chair is always a moment markets watch closely, because every chair brings their own instincts about how aggressively to fight inflation versus how much to protect economic growth. Warsh walked into the job already facing a war-driven inflation spike, and in his very first meeting as chair, the Fed held interest rates steady at a range of 3.5% to 3.75%. Nothing shocking there. But buried in the fine print of that meeting was something that quietly rattled the metals market. Almost nobody noticed this at first. 4 times a year, the Fed publishes something called the dot plot. Essentially, an anonymous poll of the 18 top Fed officials, each marking a dot on a chart to show where they personally think interest rates should be by year's end. At that June meeting, the dot plot revealed a Fed that was deeply divided. 9 of those 18 officials wanted at least one more rate hike before the year was over. 8 wanted no change at all. Only 1 wanted a cut. Think about what that means for a moment. The very people setting the price of money in America couldn't agree with each other. Markets hate uncertainty, but they hate mixed signals from the referee even more, because it means the next move genuinely could go either way. This changes everything about how you should be reading the next 24 hours, because tomorrow the Fed meets again, and this time there won't be a fresh dot plot to soften the blow. The dot plot only comes out at 4 meetings a year, in March, June, September, and December. Tomorrow's meeting is not one of them. That means the only information markets will get is the Fed's written statement, released at 2 p.m. Eastern, and then Chair Warsh's press conference 30 minutes later, where every word, every pause, every raised eyebrow will be dissected by traders around the world in real time. No dot plot to hide behind. Just a live, unscripted conversation about the future of your money. Here's an unexpected statistic that puts the stakes in perspective. Just 2 weeks before this video, prediction markets gave a rate hike at this meeting less than an 11% chance. As of the most recent readings, that probability had roughly tripled to somewhere between 34 and 38%, nearly a 1 in 3 shot. That is one of the fastest repricings of a single Fed meeting that traders can remember. Something shifted, and shifted hard in a matter of days. What shifted? 3 things, and each one deserves a moment of your attention, because each one tells a different part of the story. First, inflation data actually cooled. In mid-July, the government's Consumer Price Index report for June came in softer than expected. The annual inflation rate ticked down to around 3.5% from over 4% the month before, and it was the largest monthly decline in headline inflation in more than 5 years. On the surface, that should have calmed hawkish fears completely. A cooling inflation report should be gold-friendly. Instead, something almost contradictory happened. History tells a very different story here than you'd expect. Because at nearly the same moment the cooling inflation data came out, crude oil prices climbed back above $100 a barrel, driven once again by tension tied to the same Iran-related conflict. So even as backward-looking inflation numbers improved, forward-looking energy costs reignited the exact fear that started this whole chain reaction in February. Second, Chair Warsh himself, testifying before Congress in mid-July, pushed back on the idea that the worst of inflation was behind us, keeping alive the possibility that more tightening could still be needed. Markets listen to a Fed chair's tone almost as closely as they listen to actual data, and a hawkish tone from the person who casts the deciding vote carries enormous weight. Third, the 10-year Treasury yield, essentially the interest rate the U.S. government pays to borrow money for a decade, climbed to some of its highest levels in over a year, another signal that bond markets were bracing for tighter policy rather than looser policy. Now here's the part that should matter most to you personally, whether you're 25 or 75. If you're saving for retirement, a Fed decision like this one touches your 401k, your pension fund, and the interest rate on any bonds you hold. If you're a parent trying to put money aside for your kids, it touches the value of every dollar you're setting aside. Because inflation is the invisible tax that quietly shrinks what that money can actually buy years from now. If you're already retired and living off fixed income, this is arguably the group with the most at stake, because a wrong turn in inflation can erode a lifetime of careful saving faster than almost anything else in the economy. And if you're a worker who's never bought a single ounce of gold in your life, this still touches you, because higher interest rates mean higher costs on your credit card, your car loan, and your mortgage. There's no version of tomorrow's decision that stays contained to Wall Street. It reaches every kitchen table in the country. So where does that leave gold and silver sitting right on the edge of this decision? As of the most recent trading sessions, gold has been holding in a tight band right around $4,000 to $4,150 an ounce, and silver has been hovering in the high 50s to low 60s. Traders describe this as a kind of standoff, both metals essentially frozen in place, waiting for Wednesday's announcement to break the tie. Prediction markets, as of the latest snapshot, still lean toward the Fed holding rates steady rather than hiking, with odds somewhere in the range of 6 or 7 in 10. But that leaves real, meaningful odds, something close to 1 in 3, on a surprise hike. And a surprise is exactly what markets fear most, because a hold that everyone expected barely moves prices at all. A hike nobody fully priced in could hit hard and fast. Here's a hidden connection that very few casual investors are tracking, and it involves silver specifically. Silver isn't just a monetary metal like gold. Roughly 6 out of every 10 ounces of silver used in the world go toward industrial purposes, solar panels, semiconductors, electric vehicle components, and the wiring inside the technology you use every day. That means silver has 2 separate engines driving its price: the monetary engine, which moves with interest rates just like gold, and the industrial engine, which moves with economic growth. A hawkish Fed that slows the economy down to fight inflation actually hits silver twice, once through higher real yields, and again by threatening the industrial demand that gold simply doesn't have to worry about. That's part of why silver's swings this year have been even more dramatic than gold's, and why the ratio between the two metals, how many ounces of silver it takes to buy 1 ounce of gold, has stretched out to levels rarely seen in recent years, from around 55 to 1 back in the spring, to nearly 70 to 1 heading into this meeting. But, and this is the reality check that matters most, a single Fed meeting, even a dramatic one, is not the whole story of gold and silver in 2026. It's a chapter, not the book. Underneath all the day-to-day noise, there's a structural story that hasn't gone away, no matter which way tomorrow's vote lands. Central banks around the world, not individual investors, but actual national governments, have continued buying gold at a historically elevated pace. In the first quarter of this year alone, central banks purchased an estimated 244 tons of gold, more than their 5-year average, with major buyers including China and Poland continuing to diversify away from holding so much of their reserves in US, or dollars. According to a recent World Gold Council survey, roughly 9 in 10 central banks expect their gold reserves to keep growing over the next year. That is not a group of investors chasing a headline. That is a slow, deliberate, multi-year repositioning of how nations store their wealth. And there's a number sitting underneath all of this that almost nobody says out loud on the news. The total debt of the United States government now stands above $39 trillion, with interest payments on that debt alone exceeding $1 trillion a year, something close to $3 billion every single day, just in interest. Historically, a government carrying that kind of debt load has a strong incentive to eventually favor lower interest rates over higher ones, because higher rates make an already enormous debt even more expensive to service. That's not a guarantee about what happens tomorrow. It's a much longer, slower current running beneath the day-to-day tide, one that some analysts believe eventually favors gold and silver again, regardless of what any single meeting decides. Let's rewind further back than most people bother to look, because history genuinely does rhyme here. The last time gold and silver went through this kind of gut-wrenching swing tied to a Fed fighting inflation was back in the late 1970s and early 1980s, when a different Fed chair, Paul Volcker, pushed interest rates to levels that seem almost unimaginable today, all in an effort to break the back of runaway inflation. Gold had soared for years leading into that period, then it too went through violent, stomach-churning corrections along the way, even as the longer-term structural story stayed intact. Investors who panicked and sold during those corrections often looked back years later and realized they'd sold near a bottom, not near a top. That's not a prediction that history repeats exactly. Nobody can promise that. But it is a reminder that sharp corrections inside a longer bull market have happened before, and they didn't necessarily mean the bull market was over. Some analysts studying today's setup point to that decade specifically when they talk about why a 30% pullback in gold doesn't automatically mean the multi-year story is finished. Now picture 3 different versions of tomorrow, because thinking it through this way tends to cut through the panic that headlines love to create. In the first version, the Fed holds rates steady, exactly as most traders currently expect, and Chair Warsh strikes a tone that's neither aggressively hawkish nor surprisingly dovish. In that scenario, gold and silver likely see a fairly muted reaction, because a widely expected outcome rarely shocks a market that's already priced it in. Attention would then shift almost immediately to Thursday's inflation report as the next real catalyst. In the second version, the Fed delivers that surprise 25 basis point hike that roughly 1 in 3 traders are currently pricing in. Markets have explicitly said this would catch a majority of participants flat-footed, and a shock of that size could push gold toward the lower end of the ranges analysts have been discussing, with silver likely falling even harder given its added industrial sensitivity. In the third version, the one given the smallest probability right now, but still worth naming, the Fed surprises everyone by signaling more openness to eventual cuts than expected, perhaps citing concerns about a softening labor market. That outcome, currently seen as the least likely of the 3, would tend to be the most bullish for both metals, potentially reigniting the kind of rally that carried them to records back in January. Which brings us to the part of this story almost nobody is watching, hidden in plain sight the very next morning. Even if tomorrow's Fed decision comes back as an uneventful hold, exactly as most traders expect, the calendar hands markets a second catalyst almost immediately. On Thursday morning, less than a day after the Fed's announcement, the government releases the June reading of the Personal Consumption Expenditures Index, The inflation gauge the Fed itself has said it trusts more than any other. A hold from the Fed, paired with a hot PCE report the very next morning, could reopen every single one of these hawkish fears all over again. A hold paired with a cool PCE report could do the opposite, and finally give gold and silver the kind of relief rally that's been missing for months. In other words, even the safe, expected outcome tomorrow may not be the end of this story. It might just be the pause before the real move. So here is where the analysts currently stand, for whatever it's worth. And remember, none of this is a guarantee, only a range of possible outcomes based on current information. Some institutional forecasters, including major Wall Street banks, have targets for gold by year-end that range broadly from around $4,300 on the more cautious end, up toward $4,900 to $5,000 on the more optimistic end, with a wide range in between depending on how the rate picture unfolds from here. Silver forecasts, tied closely to that persistent supply deficit the industry has now logged for 6 straight years running, tend to track a similar pattern, muted in the near term if rates stay elevated, but with meaningfully more room to run if and when the cutting cycle eventually resumes. None of these are promises. Markets historically surprise almost everyone in both directions, more often than the confident headlines suggest. Here's the powerful realization underneath everything we've just walked through. The story was never really about a shiny metal in a vault. It was about trust. Trust in currency, trust in central bankers, trust that the dollar in your pocket will still buy roughly what it buys today. Gold and silver have functioned as a kind of report card on that trust for thousands of years, long before the Federal Reserve existed, long before anyone had heard the phrase interest rate, stretching back through empires that debased their coins and watched their economies crumble as a result. Every time inflation runs hot, every time debt piles up faster than a government can responsibly manage, people quietly begin asking the same ancient question. What happens if the money itself stops being trustworthy? Gold and silver don't answer that question by making promises. They answer it simply by existing outside the system that's being questioned. Tomorrow afternoon, at 2 o'clock Eastern Time, we'll get a piece of that answer, at least for the next few months. Maybe the Fed holds steady and gold and silver breathe a quiet sigh of relief. Maybe there's a surprise hike and both metals take a hard, fast hit that shakes out anyone who wasn't prepared for volatility. Maybe Thursday's inflation report ends up mattering more than Wednesday's decision ever did. Nobody, not the analysts, not the traders, not the Fed itself, can promise you which of those paths comes true. What we can tell you is this: understanding the mechanism matters more than guessing the outcome. If you understand why gold and silver move the way they do, through real interest rates, through inflation expectations, through central bank trust, through structural supply and demand, you're no longer reacting to headlines in a panic. You're watching the same forces play out that have shaped currencies and metals for centuries, just with modern names attached to them. That's not a reason to fear tomorrow's decision. It's a reason to understand it. If you learned something new today, make sure to subscribe to Money Insights and like this video. More powerful financial insights are coming next.